before I got diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, I was strong, I was confident, I was physically able. And I didn't realize to what extent that had an effect on the way I saw myself, my identity, which is normal, I would have thought. But then it changes, and then you become slower. You walk slower. People are kind of queuing up behind you, and they have to be patient. And you're aware of the effect that you're having on other people, kind of thing. But even amongst those set of circumstances, I was able to kind of pull myself back or retain some kind of control of my situation. But that's what I want to talk about. What do you think your identity is?
Don't really think about it consciously, I think. I know that I have a persona that I've had since I was probably coming out of university. Being the first generation Afro-Caribbean, there was an identity put on me because you had to have some sort of armor and defense on the streets. Sounds heavy, but it's true. I'm from inner city, so you had to have a sort of identity that will protect you. You choose your identity depending how people treat you. And during those times, it was quite harsh to be black and a black man. So I adopted to sort of join a group of people that were like me. And so I started to twist my hair in an Afro way. I was proud of being Afro and saying, yeah, this is who I am, take me as I am. Throughout the years, it's gone from being this sort of Caribbean to a Caribbean/British. And there was different movements at the time to do with music. There was a group of people called Soul to Soul, and they adopted a dreadlock look, but they would shave the sides of their head and it was like a Mohican. So it was almost kind of like a punk Rasta. And so you had this dichotomy where I'm like, okay, I like that look, and I'm not the Rasta, because I went to Jamaica when I was quite young, and I was clearly an Englishman. Wherever I went, it was like, yo, English, yo, British, yo. So I couldn't fake being Jamaican, not that I tried to, but in England, they put it on me that I was, because white guys would put on this fake Jamaican accent to me when they spoke. And I'm like, yeah, man. And I kind of copied them, but it weren't me, So I had to sort of find this balance. And this group of people who had the funky dread persona, thought, like that funky dread, what's that all about? So I explored that and adopted it and became sort of this guy who's saying, okay, I'm not completely this way or the other. I found a medium in the middle that suits me and gone forward with that.
I would have moved here as my identity being a Ghanaian person. But then when people perceived me, they would say, oh, but you're mixed. And in my head, I was thinking, no, I'm Ghanaian. What are you talking about? And then my family moved to Ireland. And then I was perceived as someone who was a Londoner because of my accent. And so that, again, changed my perception of myself and how I tried to readjust, I guess, my visual identity, as well as even the way that I spoke and how I saw, I guess, my core self.
I would expect that you, being an artist, you want to say things that are quite individual or quite you, or express yourself, which is different from everybody else, I think.
There's a lot that shifts depending on your environment. But from the age of 5, I love drawing, and being interested in art is sort of, I have that continuum in it, but then things come and go. I remember when I was first a mother, it was very interesting. Having, big from a mixed race marriage and having kids who had a different race to me, suddenly that became part of my identity. And, the first days of motherhood where you're constantly with your child the whole time and always with them. And I remember the first time I went out without my little baby and was, people won't know that I am this identity. Suddenly I'd lost part of my identity because he wasn't there as my appendage. And it's quite weird that you kind of almost, that sort of other people's perception of you. But then later, then again, you always just relax and think about the people their view of your identity is one thing, and then the sort of strangers in other situations view is another perception of you.
I'm really fascinated by your identity changing when you became a mother, because you said that when you left the house without your child, people didn't see you or perceive you as being a mother anymore. And then you wanted to go back to your child so that you could have that, I guess, evolution in your identity.
Yeah, I guess it's not so much an evolution in my identity. It became so much part of who I was. I mean, I think I'd always really wanted to have children, so it was something that was sort of there anyway. But this sort of, you know, you do change. Well, I felt I changed a lot, and I became, you know, this small child and then children became so much part of who I am as well. That, and it's really odd if you're on the tube and you see a mother with children, and you know she's having a nightmare or whatever, or she's sharing a laugh, and you kind of have a knowing look, but they're like, well, she might not know whether I have children or not, because I'm there like being just a person, not a parent. And they are kind of like different identities.
What about you, Angelique? Do you find that focusing on yourself is important to you?
So I was born in Suriname, which is a Dutch colony above Brazil. And when I grew up, my neighborhood looked like this. So every mix, you know, every color, and I was just one of the many ethnic minorities. There wasn't really a predominant ethnic group. I remember when I was in Holland, all I tried to do was become as invisible as possible, meaning I started to dress like the Dutch would dress, which when I went to university, I tried to dress like a law student. I did all the things that, you know, you're supposed to do, become members of student societies, and so I was really quite self-aware, although I was letting the environment dictate for me who I wanted to become. And as I grew older, and every time I teach a workshop or I work with clients, my first thing that I look at is, what is your identity? Because I really believe now, having gone through this whole journey and having read a lot about identity, I think a lot of the time we let our past define us. So it could be traumatic experiences. It could be, you know, things that our grandparents have told us. You could be Jewish, you could be Chinese, you could be white. You could be proud of it. It could be really detrimental. It will impact, you know, everything that you are.
You're modeling, and you have to change identity, and be aware of people's judgments towards you as well. Sometimes, how do you define yourself within those kind of situations?
I grew up in a little kind of Cotswold town, and my primary school of about 300, and then my secondary school of about 900. There was one black girl there. Otherwise, everyone was white. There's no Chinese. There was no other ethnic groups there. So for me, it was during my school years. It was very much about your identity wasn't based on other people's perception on how you look and sort of living to a certain stereotype. It was more about the other things you did. So maybe whether you had a part-time job or what other kind of sports or talent you had. So I got signed when I was 15 to a modelling agency, and it wasn't until I then was in London more that I was kind of more exposed to other ethnic groups. Like I had various friends at clubs and things like that, but it wasn't as much as when I came to London. And even like programs I used to watch, you know, like Friends and things, there was never anybody else other than white, English or American people in those programs, and I didn't even realise that. And then I found that when I was modelling, that people did have a perception of me without knowing me. They knew what I looked like, and they knew what job I did. My little brother, he's only like a toddler, but he was very much said to me once, well, I don't want to go to school, I want to know what you do, I want to smile in front of a camera. And I mean, he's only little, so obviously that's a fairly kind of, you know, I'm not too bothered about that. But it's true, I think a lot of people assume that for me, that's what I do. I am there for people to put clothes on me and to have makeup done how other people want their makeup, and pose how other people want me to pose. My casting director once told me, you know, modelling, the hard work starts when you get signed. You know, your appearance will get you through the door, but it's your personality and your identity which will keep you in the room. And to be honest, I thought he was talking rubbish at first, but actually it took me about a month working in the industry to realise actually that's exactly that he's right. You do have to fight a lot harder, I think, to not just be the kind of conformed person in the picture. Like an actor might go to work and have to act for a while, they still go home as themselves. They don't necessarily go home as the person they're pretending to be for that time.
I headhunt in quite the senior roles, so CEOs, all of them directors. There is always something about certain candidates that get them like 3 or 4 offers at the same time, and then there's another batch of candidates that never get an offer. And I think there's something about a core self-confidence in who they are rather than what the role would mean to them. They are there to really make this environment solution-oriented. They're there to listen, and they're there to serve. And the differences with other people is that somehow they lack the confidence. They think, can I do this? So they're more self-oriented towards their own doubts about themselves. So when people start thinking, I'm a reflection of a possibility, that to me is interesting.